Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto marries Fire Daiymo's daughter, Konaha bashing part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Academy and Akatsuki. Naruto had done exceedingly well in the academy. When he first joined the academy top he was automatically placed as the Dobi, but in less than 3 months he had taken the 5th place by storm. He developed friendships with many of his classmates. Choji and he both shared a love of various foods, although he preferred ramen whereas Choji preferred barbecue pork. Both he and Shikamaru had tactical minds, although Naruto was a lot more energetic than Shikamaru. He and Ino both shared their appreciation for flowers. The two had taught each other various gardening techniques in their free time. He and Shino had become quick friends, especially since he showed Shino his insect contract. However, with friendships, came enemies, and his worst enemies were Sakura, Sasuke, and Kiba. At first he thought he might be able to get along with Kiba, that is until the second week of the academy. Flashback. Kiba pushed Hinata against the wall with a lecherous grin on his face. Oh come on Hinata, why not? I mean in a few months we will be shinobi, and we might end up dying, why waste this chance? Hinata struggled against the Inuzuka's grip. It told Yuk Kiba, I'll love another. Kiba began to squeeze her arms and make her squeak in pain. It's that Naruto shit huh? He tightened the grip he had on her arms. Oh please, he could never please you like I could. He puckered his lips and leaned towards Hinata. Hey shit stain. Kiba turned and saw the end of a bow staff smash into his face. Forcing him to let go of Hinata, Kiba tumbled and hit a tree nearby. Akamaru, who had been whimpering off to the side, walked over to his master and began to whimper. Kiba pushed himself up and saw who had knocked him down. His eyes narrowed when he saw Naruto standing in front of him wearing a black cloak with red clouds, holding a bow staff. Naruto pointed the bow staff at Kiba. I suggest you walk away Kiba, or someone will get hurt. Kiba snarled at Naruto and got up. Yeah, and it's going to be you. He ran at the blonde with his claws extended and slashed at the blonde. Naruto sidestepped him and delivered a punch right into Kiba's chest. Kiba staggered a bit and coughed up a bit of blood. Naruto stepped back as Hinata stood a few feet behind Naruto. You have a lot of nerve treating a woman as you did Inuzuka slime. I could have you arrested for attempting to force yourself on a woman. Naruto spoke the next part with finality, especially my fiancé. Kiba glared at the blonde, while Hinata had hearts in her eyes. He accepts. Kiba snarled at the blonde and then pointed to Hinata. I will do whatever I feel to women, all they are good for is to cook and make kids. Comma. Naruto snarled at Kiba as he spun his bow staff. You should think before you say things Inuzuka, especially in front of me. Naruto launched himself at Kiba and buried the tip of his bow staff in Kiba's chest, cracking several ribs. Kiba coughed up more blood. Naruto jumped in Kiba's guard and delivered a strike at the mutt's chin. Akamaru quivered in the back, feeling intimidated by the blonde's aura. Kiba was launched into the air by a strike from Naruto's bow staff. As he was flipping backwards in the air, Naruto jumped up and placed the bow staff firmly on his waist at a horizontal angle. He then began to spin in the air, and directed the spinning bow staff at the Inuzuka. Kiba was launched into the ground. Kiba landed face first into the dirt, scratching up his face quite badly. Naruto turned to Hinata and walked over to her. She flinched when he reached out to touch her. He retracted his hand. Don't worry, I am not going to hurt you. He slowly reached towards her and began to examine where Kiba had gripped her. There were claw marks. He looked at the Inuzuka and made a mental note to talk to his mother. After he fixed up Hinata's injury he got up and began to walk away. Wait. He turned around and saw Hinata twiddling her fingers as she looked at her feet. See the part about me being why your fiancé, were you. Naruto cut her off before she could continue. Since the council meeting, I observed you, You seem to harbor genuine feelings for me. He turned to look her in the eyes. I may not harbor the same feelings for you, yet, but I guess I can at least give you a chance. Naruto turned away and walked over to Kiba. He picked him up as Akamaru whimpered near him. He walked out of the academy and headed towards the Inuzuka compound. Flashback end. Kiba had been severely punished by his mother. It was considered a disgrace in the Inuzuka clan for anyone to force themselves on another without the other person's consent. Kiba had been disgraced in the clan because of it, and had forever lost his position as heir to the Inuzuka clan. Today it was the genin rank placement, and there were many people hoping to be placed on a team with their friends. Funu was watching Naruto with a sad look in her eyes. He has accepted the Hyuga heiress. He accepted the daimyo's daughter before any of us could try. And me, I haven't even managed to muster the nerve to tell him how I feel. To think, the granddaughter of Madara Uchiha, not even able to muster up the nerve to tell the man I love how I feel. She slumped into her chair as Iruka and Mizuki entered the room. All right class, I will now announce the top 5 academy students for this year. He looked at his clipboard. 5th place goes to Shino Aburame, 4th place goes to Hinata Hyuga, 3rd place goes to Funu Uchiha. Funu snarled to herself. Had the academy focused more on practical skills rather than history lessons, she would have taken 2nd or 3rd place. 2nd place is Sakura Haruno. Said fangirl did her classic Banshee shriek, making half the class go deaf. Once Iruka was able to hear again, he continued, and 1st place, for the title of Rookie of the Year, goes to the fangirls of both Naruto and Sasuke, the Sasuke fan club being led by Sakura, and the Naruto fan club being led by Amy, looked forwards. The boys edged closer to hear who would be the Rookie of the Year. Finally Iruka spoke. As a tie between Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha, congratulations, this is the first time there has been a tie for Rookie of the Year since the Sandaime graduated the academy. Now, Iruka was silenced by Sasuke, who stood up and yelled. This is unacceptable. Only an Uchiha could ever be worthy of the honor of becoming Rookie of the Year, not some no-name clanless freak. The room became silent as Naruto turned to the Uchiha and snarled, "You want to say that again, brat?" The two got into a glaring contest. "You are a no-name clanless freak who should be kneeling in front of me like a dog. I will not share the title of Rookie of the Year with anyone." Naruto smirked. "Then how about a little spar? The winner is Rookie of the Year. The loser becomes the dead last." The class broke out into whispers as Sasuke smirked. "Get ready to be put in your place, Dobi." Sasuke got up and walked to the training field. Naruto followed suit. The two combatants looked at each other. Iruka stood between them as the two got into fighting stances. The match between Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki. This is a purely taijutsu match. Bunshin, Henge, and Kawarimi are allowed, nothing else. Hajime. The two shot at each other and smashed their fists into each other. Sasuke pulled back his fist. It felt like he was punching iron. Before he could react, Naruto had delivered a strike to Sasuke's side and sent him to the ground. Sasuke got up and sent a kick to the blonde, who quickly blocked it with his forearm. He grabbed Sasuke's foot and yanked him off the ground. He spun him around 3 times before he slammed Sasuke face first into the dirt. Iruka nodded. The winner is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto began to walk away. The rest of the class was applauding. Sasuke pushed himself up and glared at Naruto's back. "No, I refuse to lose to a clanless freak like him." Sasuke ran through hand seals. Iruka saw this and yelled. "Sasuke, stop. The spar is over, you lost." Sasuke finished his hand seals and screamed. "Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu." Be inhaled and then breathed out a ball of fire, heading directly towards Naruto. Naruto slowly turned around and saw the fireball coming at him. He sighed and performed a single hand seal. Mokuden. Mokujo Heiki. The fireball engulfed Naruto, much to the shock and dismay of a good portion of the class. Funu ran forward and screamed, "No, Naruto-kun." She ran to the area that was burning. Hinata ran forward, but she was suddenly stopped. She turned to see that Kiba had grabbed her arm and had a grin on his face. Now I am the only one you can have. He grinned, but he fell over when Hinata kicked him in the nuts. Sei ran over to where the fire was, tears streaming down her face. Sasuke grinned as he looked at the fire. Yes, no one can compare to me, I am invincible. Sasuke began to laugh like a maniac, until the fire cleared. Right where the fire was, there was a dome of what appeared to be wood. Everyone's eyes widened. How did a dome of wood appear in the middle of a spar? The only person who could do such a thing was Hashirama Senju. Could Naruto be? Mokuden. Jubaku Iso. The ground beneath Sasuke erupted as Naruto came flying out of it, being followed by dense vines that began to wrap around Sasuke. Sasuke was fully wrapped up in the vines, leaving only his face visible. Naruto landed in front of Sasuke and placed a kunai at his throat. I win, Dobi. Naruto smirked as he walked towards the students, and was glomped by two sobbing girls, Hinata and Funu. Naruto was not surprised by Hinata, but Funu. Funu latched onto his chest and sobbed out, I thought I lost you. She began to cry into his chest. Naruto lifted her chin and made her look at him. Funu, tell me, do you truly and honestly care for me? Funu hiccuped and nodded her head, or doing this for any reason to gain power. She choked out a sob as she shook her head. No, are you doing this to gain my family's bloodline? Funu sobbed and shook her head as she buried her face into Naruto's chest. Naruto sighed. He lifted her chin. Funu, at HT moment I do not love you, but like I told Hinata, I will at least give you a chance. Funu smiled and rested her head on Naruto's chest. Hinata snarled at Funu. She then pulled Naruto off of the ground and with a new resolve yelled at Funu, back off bitch, he is mine. The class was startled by Hinata's boldness. Funu was slack-jawed for a minute before she grabbed Naruto out of Hinata's grip and pulled him to her, making his face go between her. No way, he is mine, damn it. Hinata grabbed Naruto's arm and pulled. Mine. Funu did the same. Mine. 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 The class was following how the two heiresses kept pulling Naruto as if it was a tug of war. The Naruto fan club was letting anime tears fall. Why can't I have Naruto-kun? Going through each of their heads. This continued until Iruka managed to break up the tug of war and directed the group of kids to the class. Meanwhile, Yakumo had sat in her room painting for the last few months, only leaving to get food and drink, and to go to the bathroom. She had been painting this same portrait for the last few months. Yakumo was smiling as she thought to herself, I will make you mine, Naruto-kun. She looked at the painting. It was of her and Naruto in a lecherous pose. Her eyes were glowing a dark purple, and Naruto's eyes were glowing red with black slits, an aura of 9 tails in his background, and a burning Konaha behind the two as they made love. Yakumo's eyes began to glow purple. Soon, we shall become one. The next day, Genin placements. Iruka walked into the classroom to find all of his students quiet. He was at first surprised, until he saw that all of them were asleep. He sighed and opened his mouth, wake up. The class practically jumped from their seats as they turned to their teacher. Now that I have your attention, I will be assigning you all to your Jonin instructors. He pulled out a clipboard as he walked up to the front of the room. Now there has been a change in team placements. In the past it was 3 Genin assigned to 1 Jonin. We are doing an experimental run to see possible future team success. It will now be 2 Jonin assigned to 4 Genin. He looked at the clipboard. Team 1 is. Naruto sat and relaxed as he waited to see who he would be teamed up with. Team 7 will be Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto smirked. Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto's face twitched. Sakura Haruno. His face twitched even more. And Kiba Inuzuka. Naruto had it. He smashed his face into the desk as he began to curse to himself. Iruka sadly looked at Naruto as he continued. Team 8 will be Hinata Hyuga, Funu Uchiha, Ino Yamanaka, and Amy Mitarashi. The 4 girls looked at each other, while lightning seemed to cross between Hinata and Funu's eyes. Team 9 is still in circulation from last year, so Team 10 will be Shikamaru Nara, Shoji Akamichi, Shino Aburame, and Sai. Uruka looked at his students. May you all prosper in your careers as shinobi of Konohagakure no Sato. Return here for your team placements in a week. Uruka walked out of the room as the students began to file out of the room. Naruto walked up to Hinata and Funu, who were waiting for him at the door. So, do you two want to come to my house tonight? We are having a celebration for graduation at my place. The two girls quirked an eyebrow. The two asked simultaneously. Naruto smirked as he whispered in the girls' ears. It's a surprise. He turned to the rest of the class. Hey, for those of you who got an invitation to the celebration tonight, head to the training ground tonight at 4. He turned back to Funu and Hinata. I hope to see you two there. Naruto turned to walk out of the building. Hey. Naruto turned to see Sasuke, Sakura, and Kiba glaring at him. Why didn't we get any invitations? Naruto smirked as he nonchalantly spoke. Because I hate you. The three-face faulted as Naruto walked out of the room and headed down the hallway. He ran through a set of hand seals, and he vanished in a swirl of paper. Outside of Konaha, Mitsuki was heading towards Konaha, her father royal guard behind her. She had insisted on moving to Konaha to be with her fiancé. Her father approved so long as she had her guards with her. She was carrying her naginata. Most princesses were pampered, spoiled, okay, so was she, but her father downright refused to allow his daughter to be a pushover. He had trained her to be a fine warrior, and in Hai no Kuni, there was no person better with a naginata than she was. She looked into her pouch and looked at the gift in it. She smiled. Today was the day she would officially promise herself to Naruto. Today she would officially be his fiancé. She sighed to herself as she realized that she would have to share him. It did not matter. She would always care for him. She wondered how the Tenshinhan flower was doing. He had shown it to her the last time they met, and it was truly beautiful. She had immediately declared that when the two were old enough, they would marry. She looked up and saw the gates of Konaha. She picked up the pace as she headed towards the home of her fiancé. Meanwhile, Naruto suddenly appeared in a swirl of paper that quickly turned into chakra and went back into Naruto. He looked up at the sight before him. In front of him was the home he had made with his Mokuden Jutsu. It was an ornate-looking building. It was completely made of wood, and it had a lovely scenery to it. It was a home fit for a daimyo, or in Naruto's case the Hokage's son, along with his girls. He walked up to the front gates and pushed open the door as he marveled the interior. It was like walking into a palace. He walked up the nearby steps and headed to the back of the building. He opened the door, to reveal a large round area. Tables were set up, food was steaming on the table, and there was a chakra-powered speaker system. He was about to go check out the rest of the place. Oh Naruto-kun. Naruto turned to see Kyuubi standing behind him in a partially see-through kimono. Where have you been, Naruto-kun? I was so lonely. She shook her shoulders as she allowed her kimono to slip a bit, causing a slight nosebleed in the blonde. Naruto. Naruto's eyes widened when he heard that voice. He looked at Kyuubi who was giggling. He slowly turned around, and was shocked to see who was behind him. Naruto, what have I told you about being a pervert? The person who said this had long blue hair with a white origami flower in it. She was wearing a black cloak with red clouds on it. The two people next to her were both redheads. One had a pair of eyes that had a ripple pattern in it, and had darker red hair that was long enough to braid. The other redhead had lighter orangish red hair and it was spiking up everywhere. Standing behind him were his extended family, Konan Uzumaki, his aunt, Nagato Rakudo, his uncle, and Yahiko Kazama, one of his old teachers, his family. Naruto looked at Konan, Yahiko, and Nagato and screamed, Auntie Konan, Uncle Nagato, Yahiko-senpai. What are you doing here? Konan giggled as she wrapped her arm around Nagato's shoulders, making the Rinnegan user blush. Oh, we decided to come by, celebrate my nephew's graduation from the academy. She giggled as she walked up to Naruto and pinched his cheeks, and the rookie of the year too. Kakuzu will love this. At the mention of Kakuzu, Naruto's eyes widened. Kakuzu Jisun is here, that is, Naruto looked like he was about to shout in glee when he shivered. Wait, if Kakuzu is here, then that means, his eyes widened in horror, before he could open his mouth to speak. All hail Jashin-sama. Naruto turned towards the direction he heard Hidan's voice from and screamed as he ran towards the voice. Damn it Hidan, no worshipping Jashin in my kitchen. Naruto ran down a hallway as Yahiko face-palmed. Oh boy, why did we bring them again? Konan pouted as she looked at her brother-in-law. Nagato and Yahiko were half-brothers, both had different mothers, but the same father. Nagato's mother was a descendant of the Rakudo Sennin, while Yahiko's mother was not. Oh come on, how many times do I have to explain this? Zetsu wanted to introduce Naruto to his daughter. Deidara wanted to see whose art was better. Kakuzu wanted to try to win his money back. Kisame wanted to see who was better, a sword fighter or a bow staff user. And Itachi wants to know how his brother is doing. Yahiko sighed in defeat. He still could not figure out how Naruto, at 9 years old, was capable of beating a 90-year-old shinobi at poker, 10 games in a row. Yeah. Everyone turned to see Kakuzu standing at the side, looking at his wallet. Since that game I have not been able to concentrate on gambling, and have lost my entire life savings. He sighed as he turned around. I will never know how he does it. Still the kid's got spunk. He may still think Sasori Dono's art is the best, but he sure as hell knows how to make a bang. Deidara walked out of the hallway carrying several sticks of Naruto's homemade dynamite. These things are awesome, and the best part, they require no chakra. Deidara was grinning like a madman as he looked around for something to blow up. Nagato looked at Deidara. Deidara, what did we say before we got here? Deidara looked down and grumbled out. No blowing up Naruto's stuff, unless he gives permission. Nagato smiled as he fished in his pockets. Good boy, have a granola. He threw the granola which Deidara proceeded to catch and eat. Fish. You are cooking fish. Come on Naruto, why fish? Everyone's sweat dropped at Kisame. Oh god, did no one send the memo not to cook fish? Everyone immediately found either the floor or the ceiling quite interesting. Konan face-palmed as she grumbled herself. Then again we did not even tell him we were coming in the first place. Damn it Hidan, I just cleaned this room up. Go practice Jashin in the cellar, or outside, anywhere but in the important rooms of the house. Naruto kicked open the kitchen door as he was carrying a bloody mop. I swear I questioned that mon's sanity. He looked up. Okay, kitchen is clean. Oh and Kisame, what was that about fish? Everyone snickered as Kisame began to growl in anger. Let it go Kisame. Everyone turned to see Itachi walking out of the bathroom. It's not like he knew we were coming. He pulled out a box of Pocky and began to munch down on it. Hey Itachi, how is it going? Oh by the way, your brother is an ass, tried to kill me yesterday with a fireball. Itachi sighed as he rubbed his temples. Why am I not surprised? He always did take after our father, but anyways, when is the party starting? Itachi asked with excitement. After all, parties meant sake, and Itachi loved his sake. It will be starting at around 4, so that means we have 3 hours. Naruto turned to leave, before he shouted, and Zetsu, stay the hell out of my damn wine cellar. Naruto walked down the hall as Zetsu appeared out of the wall. Damn it, how does that bastard do it? It would be nice to use for infiltration, or to avoid so we can get his rare sake, that too. Everyone's sweat dropped. Only Zetsu would be able to have a conversation with himself and not be admitted to a mental ward. With Naruto. Naruto was walking through the halls of his mansion. He had looked at all the portraits in it. There were portraits of many various scenes of his training, his senseis. He had a few senseis, but Sasori was definitely the sensei he admired most. Oftentimes he would think of him as a father. Naruto turned down a hallway, and at the end of the hallway was an arched door, and it was locked incredibly tight. No one was getting in there unless they had the Mokuden, and no one without the Ranbanhata would be able to get out of the vault. He had made sure that it was safe from all intruders. On the walls of the hallway were various paintings and photos, ranging from photos of him with the Akatsuki, to paintings of battle scenes. he had painted a good portion of them, and Sarutobi had even offered to buy a few off of him for a generous price, but he refused, saying that each painting was special. He walked down the hall and looked at each object on the wall. One was a picture of him making his first puppet. Sasori had taken the photograph. Saying that a puppeteer's first puppet is always a memorable thing. Another was a painting of the Three Wolves Mountains in Tetsu no Kuni. They had stopped there to acquire a body for his third human puppet. The next painting was of a forest that had a beautiful design. Each one was a picture of events that he always remembered. He stopped in front of one. It was his favorite photo. The photo was of him, Sasori, Hidan, Kakuzu, Zetsu, Itachi, Kisame, Nagato, Yahiko, Konan, Deidara, and Kyuubi all in one big photo. He sighed as he turned to the door. He went through hand seals, Mokuten, Fuinkai. The wood in front of the door was instantly covered in dozens of seals that lit up for a moment before dimming back to black. Naruto walked up to the door and pushed it open and walked inside. The doors were then covered in sharp paper that would regenerate so long as there was an available source of wood, and luckily, there was a massive source. Beyond the doors was a room that he had made after he finished the house. It was a room where he kept every memento he had. On the walls were several bow staffs that he had collected from various nations. There was a bookshelf that had books of every variety, as well as a few special triggers if he moved certain books. Near the center of the room there was a beautiful tree with a smooth surface. And had lovely crimson leaves, with white flowers. There was also a table covered in various origami he had made over the years. He walked up to what looked to be a scroll rack and opened his cloak, revealing 13 scrolls. There were 7 black scrolls, and there were 6 white scrolls. Each one had a symbol on it. Naruto placed each scroll with their corresponding scroll holders based on the symbols on it. In the center was the black scroll with a red scorpion. On its left side was a black scroll with a silver cloud. And the one on its right was a black scroll with a scorpion and an Oni mask. He traced the red scorpion. Sasori, I swear your legacy will be remembered forever. I promise you. He got up and walked to the side that had various bow staffs, and pulled out his own from a seal on his wrist. He looked at it and traced the golden designs on the staff. Fuden-sama, your teachings allowed me to use this weapon. I will always honor it. He gently placed the staff on a shelf and bowed. He walked towards his bookshelf and traced the bindings of 3 books. Jakatsu Baba, your teachings have made me a match for any seal master. I will never forget you. He gently bowed and sat in front of a small closet. He opened it to reveal a small altar with 3 pictures. One was of a red-haired man who looked no older than 20. Another was of a white-haired man covered in wrinkles that had a creepy smile but still a warming one. And the last one was of a black-haired man with scars across his face, gently smiling. Naruto bowed to the 3 photos. Sasori-sensei, Jakatsu Baba, Fuden-sama, before your ends you 3 made me who I am. I will not forget you 3, nor will my future clan. I swear it. He happily smiled at the 3 photos. Well, time to party. He closed the doors and walked to his closet and looked inside. Yeah, time to party. He reached inside and grabbed its contents. 4 o'clock that night. Hinata, Funu, Yukumo, Mitsuki, Ino, Shikamaru, Choji, Shino, Amy, and a good portion of their classmates were all waiting in the training ground. They had gotten there as according to what the invitations said. Now they were just waiting for Naruto. The 4 girls that wanted to claim Naruto were getting really edgy. Just as they were about to flip out. Well, I see you all showed up. Everyone turned around to see Naruto in a tree, but everyone was shocked at his appearance. He was wearing a pair of brown cargo pants, a black muscle shirt, and arm band around his left bicep, a pair of fingerless gloves, and a pair of shades. Mitsuki, Funu, Yukumo, and Hinata, along with the entire Naruto fan club, found him absolutely hot and were trying to keep themselves from jumping him. Oh my freaking god, look at those arms, why the hell did he hide that? Was the thought running through the heads of all the girls. Naruto smiled. Since you are all here, I think we can get this party started. Naruto sliced his thumb and ran through hand seals and then slammed his palm on the tree. Reverse Kuchios. compound. A massive puff of smoke washed over the entire group as a series of black lines covered the entire training ground. When the smoke finally cleared, they were not in the training ground anymore. They were in a massive room with disco balls, lights, and a nearby snack bar. Naruto turned to the group. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get this party started. He snapped his fingers as the room was suddenly lit up with various lights and music began to play. Everyone screamed and began to run to places where they began to dance. Choji, however, slinked over to the snack bar. After an hour of partying, Naruto jumped up on stage. Alright everybody, we are now going to have the partner dance off. The best pair will receive a prize. Immediately the floors were held with several couples. Choji was still at the snack bar, when he suddenly felt someone tapping his shoulder. He turned and saw Ino giving him a devilish grin. Hey, wanna dance? Choji was not able to answer as Ino pulled him to the middle of the dance floor where she curled her finger in a "come here" motion. Naruto grinned at the two of his classmates and shouted, "Alright everybody, introducing my friends, the Akatsuki." Everyone cheered. Ever since Naruto explained the true motives of Akatsuki, the populace rather liked the group of S-rank criminals, and they eventually became celebrated in Konaha. The stage was lit with fire as Zetsu, Deidara, Yahiko, and several instruments appeared on stage. Deidara was at the drums, Zetsu was at the guitar, and Yahiko was at the electric keyboard. Naruto jumped towards the microphone and spoke into it, and for our first song, please enjoy, Closer by Inoue Joe. Start playing 4th Shippuden opening. Ino grabbed Choji and began to forcibly make him dance with her. Choji eventually began to dance to the movements, making Ino smile a bit. Choji got into the movements and the two began to dominate the dance floor. At the very end of the song, Choji lifted Ino and spun her around before he fell on his, Ino landing on his chest. Their lips crashed together. Everyone immediately stopped as they looked at the two. Ino quickly got off of Choji, who slowly pushed himself up and walked away, a forlorn expression on her face. Naruto saw the two and yelled out, "Hey, could someone take over for a minute?" Kisame immediately came out and grabbed the mic, and no heavy freaking metal Kisame. Kisame pouted and looked at the crowd. Our next song is Distance by Long Shot Party. Start playing Distance by Long Shot Party. Naruto walked up to Choji, who grabbed a bottle of sake. Choji, I know we are old enough to drink, but don't you think you should enjoy the party? Choji looked down and then quickly downed the sake. How can I enjoy the party? Look at what I did, because I was so damn clumsy I made a fool out of Ino-chan. He grabbed his face in his palms and grunted, damn it, why does this always happen to me? Naruto patted his big boned friend's back and spoke. Choji, maybe if you told Ino how you feel then. Choji cut Naruto off. She will never feel the same. He groaned again. Why did the girl I love have to be so amazing? Naruto was about to answer. What? Both Choji and Naruto turned around to see Ino standing there with her eyes wide and her mouth quivering. Choji went wide-eyed and was about to run when Naruto grabbed his shirt and slammed his back on the chair, slightly cracking it. No, Choji, you are going to sit down on this chair and explain your feelings to Ino. You are not going to run again, am I clear? Naruto gave Choji a look that said, say yes or you will be in pain, to which Choji nodded. Naruto walked past Ino and went back to the party. Ino looked at Choji and walked over to the bench. See Choji, is what you said true? Choji looked down and sighed. Yes Ino, I understand if you wouldn't want to be with me, after all, I am just a fat excuse of a. Choji did not get to finish as Ino stood and snapped at him. No, you are a sweet gentle guy that any girl should be honored to date. Choji looked surprised at Ino. He was not expecting her to say that was for sure. But Ino hugged Choji and spoke. Choji, I have liked you for so long, I only pretended to like Sasuke before to make Sakura confident. I slimmed down my figure to attract you Choji, not Sasuke. She hugged him tighter as she rested her head on his chest. Please, don't reject me, Choji looked at Ino in shock. Why would you like me of all people? Ino smiled as she nuzzled into his chest. Well, for one, you are a sweet guy, who would do anything to protect his friends, and two, you don't care what other people say about you. Sure, you get angry when people call you fat, but you don't let it control your life, while she let go of Choji and pointed to her body, which agreeable was a bit too thin to be normal, care too much about what people think of me. Choji smiled as he looked at Ino. Ino, I don't care how you look, you are an awesome confident girl, I have no idea why anyone would not want to date you. Choji looked down, Ino smiled and grabbed his face, and slammed her lips against his. Finally, Choji and Ino turned around to see their class looking at them. We were wondering when you two were going to get together. Choji and Ino were shocked. What? You think none of us noticed how Choji would look dreamily at Ino all the time, and how Ino would giggle and blush when she watched Choji during lunch? The two genin blushed in embarrassment. Amy ran up to the two. Come on lovebirds, let's party. She dragged the two to the dance floor where everyone was cheering for them. Naruto chuckled off to the side, he knew that getting those two together would be a good idea. Oh Naruto-kun. Naruto slightly shivered as he heard two voices behind him. He turned around to see Hinata and Funu grinning lecherously at him. Hi girls, how do you like the party? Funu grinned as she walked right next to Naruto. Oh, she began to trace her finger down his jawline. I think the party is spectacular. She leaned closer to his ear and said huskily, but I can think of so many more pleasurable things. Naruto shivered, causing Hinata to growl at Funu. That bitch, kick her. Hinata pushed Funu aside. Oh yes Naruto-kun, this part is amazing, why don't we discuss how great it is over a nice cup of sake? She grinned lecherously, and afterwards we can have some real fun. Hinata leaned in closer while she gently moved her hands closer to his butt. Oh girls. The two girls turned around to see Conan standing in front of them. Might I ask what you are doing to my nephew? The girls blushed profusely, realizing they had just been caught trying to seduce the woman's nephew. We were the two could not form a coherent sentence, causing Conan to giggle. Oh don't worry, I have no problem with my nephew dating you both. She looked at Naruto with a demonic tint to her eyes and a creepy smile, but if you end up becoming a pervert, I will personally cut off your little friend. Naruto quickly nodded his head. Conan immediately went back to her cheery self. Good, now, why don't you go speak with Yakumo? She indicated to the young auburn-haired girl on the side. I heard that she liked painting, why not show her what you have done? I will talk to the two young heiress, you go talk with Yakumo. The smile on her face was sincere, but underneath it, one could see an underlying threat to it. Naruto wasted no time and walked over to Yakumo. Conan meanwhile turned to the two heiresses, with a hard expression. Now, let's get a few things straight about my nephew. Naruto walked up to Yakumo, who was sitting with a drawing pad in her lap. Hey Yakumo, she looked up at him, I was wondering how you were doing. Yakumo smiled as she went back to her notepad. Oh, I'm doing fine, Naruto-kun. So, she looked up at him, I heard you had a variety of paintings, perhaps you could show me a few. Naruto chuckled. Sure, why not, I was actually planning on showing you, Hinata, Funu, and Mitsuki them later, but hey, what is a few hours early? Yakumo stood up and followed Naruto as they went to a door near the side of the dance hall. Mitsuki saw this and narrowed her eyes. What is she going to do to my Naruto-kun? She immediately downed her punch and walked towards the door. Naruto opened a door to a room and revealed what was inside. The entire wall was covered in one massive painting, and by the looks of it, the painting is still in process of being completed. Hell, the painting was only halfway done. Yakumo walked around the room, marveling at the sight. You like it? I started it as a sort of memorial to what has happened to me in life. Yakumo looked to where she assumed the painting began, and saw a massive nine-tailed fox being pulled into a set of intricate lines on a baby's belly. She looked at the rest of the painting and saw that it was indeed based through history, if the apparent age of Naruto in each painting was any indication, but she stopped when she saw what she assumed to be Naruto weeping over a dead carcass, and another carcass behind him, but it was incomplete. The carcass she could identify had crimson red hair, and looked to be in his late teens to early 20s. Yakumo turned to Naruto. Naruto-kun, what is that? She indicated to the painting. Naruto sighed as he answered. That is a painting of my now deceased sensei, Akasuna no Sasori, who I saw as a father for a while. He walked up to a set of paints and pulled out a nearby canvas, but enough of the sad stuff, how about you give painting a shot? Naruto grinned as he presented the paints to her. She walked up to the canvas and sat down. Meanwhile, Mitsuki used the stealth skills she picked up from a few scrolls she had borrowed from the shinobi library, to sneak into the room. She watched as Yakumo began to paint. Yakumo did simple brush strokes, and then began to make complex shades and hues. After a few minutes a very beautiful picture was being formed. It was vaguely like a picture of the Hokage Tower, but there was light tinges of road where there should not be. Naruto got a closer look, and he suddenly began to feel dizzy. Yakumo grinned maliciously as she placed her hand on his cheek. Oh, feeling weak, my dear. Her malicious smile gained a hint of lust in its form. Don't worry, it won't be for long. She turned towards Naruto, revealing a pair of glowing purple eyes, and a set of fangs developing. Mitsuki saw this and jumped out as Yakumo performed a single hand sign. Ninpo, Kurama Haijutsu, Mugen Onsa chains of Fantasia. A field of chakra washed over the room, hitting all those in the room, including Mitsuki. In the genjutsu, Naruto snapped his eyes open and looked around. He found himself in the middle of Konaha, but the village was barren, burning, there was blood trailing down the street. He quickly shot up and reached for his kunai pouch, but found nothing there. Oh Naruto-kun, you won't be doing anything with those ninja tools of yours. Naruto turned to see Yakumo coming out of one of the burning buildings. Then again, why would you want to do that? She began to slip off her kimono. When you have me. She advanced for the blonde, a lecherous grin gracing her features, and a demonic aura surrounding her. Elsewhere, Mitsuki shot up and looked around. She was back in the daimyo's palace, but this was all wrong. The vines were covered in thorns, and the pond was crimson like blood, and the palace was ablaze. Now girl, we can't have you interfering in our fun with our dear Naruto-kun. Mitsuki turned to see glowing purple eyes and a set of razor-sharp teeth in a nearby shadow. After all, once he becomes ours, all this, indicating to the state of the palace, and more, shall become a reality. Mwahahahahahahaha. The eyes disappeared in the shadows, as the ground beneath Mitsuki began to rot and blacken. Naruto backed away as Yakumo began to strip in front of Hai, a sultry grin on her face. What's the matter Naruto-kun? Isn't my body? She let her entire kimono fall, revealing her figure to him, to your liking. Naruto got into a fighting stance. Yakumo, I'm warning you, step back. Yakumo only giggled at his threat. Naruto moved to strike her, but found he could not move his arms. He looked down to find his arms had been grabbed by a series of chains, and behind him was a concrete wall. He was not getting out of this. Yakumo placed her finger on his chin. Naruto-kun, I am going to show you such pleasure, you will never want it to end. Yakumo grabbed the back of his head and forced his lips against hers. Naruto tried to move his head to avoid it, but he found himself compelled to continue kissing her. She grabbed his shirt and tore it off of his body and began to use her hands to rub his chest, making Naruto groan in pleasure. Removing her lips from his, she whispered in his ear, now, for the fun part. She trailed her tongue from his cheekbone down to his jaw as she nibbled on his lip. With Mitsuki. Mitsuki grabbed onto the ledge as the ground beneath her fell through. Looking down she saw a pit filled to the brim with massive spikes covered in various serrations. Cursing to herself she thought, oh perfect, just perfect, where the hell am I? She grabbed the ledge with her other hand and hoisted herself onto the ledge. Panting, she looked around. Her home was still on fire, and by the looks of it, everything else in the genjutsu was on fire. Damn bitch, when I get my hands on her I am going to kick her. Reached to grab her weapon, but found it wasn't there. Fuck. Mitsuki growled as she looked around. Damn, there has got to be some way out of this genjutsu, and if both Naruto and I are in this genjutsu, then that means I should be able to find him. Mitsuki began to walk out towards the exit of the burning palace. If that bitch so much as hurts a single hair on my Naruto-kun's head, I am going to kick her. Back with Naruto, Yukumo continued to nibble on Naruto's lip as she snapped her fingers, causing Naruto's undergarments to disappear. Yukumo grinned as she began to reach down towards his now bare member. Ooh, Naruto-kun, it seems you got hard for you naughty boy. Naruto groaned as Yukumo began to stroke his member. Yukumo, get the hell off me, now. Yukumo giggled as she sped up the pace. Oh, don't tell me you don't like this, Naruto-kun. Yukumo stopped her stroking of his member and knelt down to it. If you don't, then maybe you will like this. Yukumo licked her lips and kissed the tip of Naruto's member. Naruto groaned in pleasure. Damn it, how the hell am I going to get out of here? This genjutsu is not going to stop from a chakra pulse. I know that much about the Kurama bloodline, so, Naruto's eyes widened. That's it. Naruto began to focus on his fingertips as he forced a certain sequence of chakra pulses to go through. This had better work. In Naruto's armory, one of the scrolls on Naruto's rack began to glow as the symbol on it began to light up. The symbol on the scroll was an Oni mask with a katana impaled through the forehead. Suddenly the scroll jumped off of the rack and rolled out, revealing a series of seals before a puff of smoke engulfed the room. Once the smoke cleared, it revealed a humanoid figure with heavy double-plated armor. It was also wearing a helmet with two curved horns on it, giving it the appearance of a demon. It also had a large fur coat that went back its ankles. The figure stood to reveal it was wearing a face mask very similar to an aim breather. On its sides were 4 black katanas still sheathed. If one looked closely, they could see a symbol of Tetsu no Kuni. This was Naruto's third human puppet, Hattori. Hattori stood stock still until a blue seal glowed on the back of its neck, and the glow continued down the entire length of the Hitokugutsu body. Suddenly the puppet looked at its hands and then snapped its fingers. A metallic voice very similar to Naruto's came out of the mask. Alright, now, time to get to the boss. The puppet ran out of the room, while the seal on its neck began to disintegrate. Meanwhile, at the party, the academy graduates were all enjoying the songs being played on the stereo, while all the Akatsuki members continued to dance on the floor. Deidara was break dancing while Kisame was head-banging to the songs. Zetsu was off to the side enjoying some punch and shrimp with a few of the genin hopefuls. Hidan was doing an air guitar on the snack table while yelling, "Rock on for Jashin-sama." Kakuzu was sitting in a chair, slumped over from drinking a case of sake. Konan was dancing with Nagato as Yahiko sat down. Itachi, however, was sitting in a corner. At first glance, nobody would think it was Itachi for one very important reason. He was hanged as an entirely different person. He had long blonde hair that was tied back into a ponytail, his eyes were jade green, and his clothes consisted of a track suit with an open red vest, along with a pair of combat boots. The Akatsuki may now be well liked in Konaha, but Itachi was still considered a missing nin. Itachi sighed as he thought to himself, why the hell can't Sandaime-sama just tell everyone what happened with the Uchiha clan? I want to walk in my home village again. Maybe get a date as myself for once, and not one of those stupid fangirls. Itachi was about to get up and get a drink, when he felt a sudden influx of chakra. He looked around to see which direction the chakra was coming from. It was coming from the other side of the house. And by the chakra's movements and the feel, it was moving somewhere else. What confused him was the fact that it felt like Naruto's, but for some reason, it seemed to steadily be growing weaker. Odd, Naruto's chakra usually either stays the same size, or grows larger. Even with high-ranking jutsu, it is hard for him to lose any chakra. Back in the genjutsu, Naruto groaned as he thought to himself, Hattori had better get here soon. Yakumo was now on his member after she had removed all of his lower clothing. She released his member with a resounding pop before she looked at Naruto with lust. Now, for the main course. She twirled her fingers as the branches holding Naruto forced Naruto onto his back. Yakumo licked her lips as she climbed up on top of him. Don't worry Naruto-kun, this is going to feel really good. She looked back towards his stiff member and positioned her entrance in front of it. She began to slowly bring herself down as she gently spread the folds of her lower lips. Oh, yes, either Yakumo was a masochist, or she was actually feeling pleasure. She finally simply let Naruto's slide inside her. Ah, she panted as she began to rock back and forth. Oh yes, she grasped her hair as she yelled. Oh yes, ooh fuck Naruto, yes. Naruto was trying as hard as he could to avoid releasing, and he was having a really hard time with that. God damn it Hattori, get over here now. With Mitsuki. Mitsuki slashed down a bunch of trees as she heard moans in the forest. Damn it, that sounds like Naruto-kun, if that bitch tries anything you'll what? Mitsuki turned around, and her eyes widened. Standing behind her was a creature with long black horn-like protrusions, massive fangs, and dark skin, but what confused her was the fact it was wearing the same clothes Yakumo was wearing. Mitsuki got into a fighting stance and snarled, "Who the hell are you?" The demon giggled in a demonic tone, "I am Ito, the manifestation of Yakumo's powers. And you must be Mitsuki, niece of Orochimaru." Mitsuki's eyes widened when Ito said who she was. How do you know that? Ito scoffed as it looked at Mitsuki. Oh please, do you honestly think I would strike against one of my barriers to ultimate power, without first discovering everything I can about my competition? I took control of Yakumo several times and looked everywhere for anything that I could use against you, Hinata, and Funu, and I must say I found some juicy information. Ito began to walk around Mitsuki. Mitsuki of the royal house of the daimyos of Hai no Kuni, daughter to Sora, daimyo of Hai no Kuni, and his beloved wife Natara, and niece to the snake Sanin, and S-rank criminal, Orochimaru. Hinata Hyuga, daughter to Hiyashi Hyuga and Hana Hyuga, out of the entire Hyuga family, she has shown the lowest possible skills in their taijutsu form, and of course, Funu Uchiha, the last living descendant of Madara Uchiha. I know everything on record about you three. Ito began to chuckle as it looked at Mitsuki, who began to smirk. On record huh? Well I got news for you. Mitsuki placed her hands together in front of her as her eyes turned even more snake-like than before. Not even a fourth of my abilities are on record. Mitsuki go into a stance and covered her right eye as she stared at Ito with her left. The eye twisted until it was so snake-like, one would think it was torn from a snake's eye socket. Osor's Iken fierce glance. Ito was frozen in place as the world around it began to darken and twist like water in a maelstrom. What is this place? Mitsuki walked towards Ito, her hand still covering her right eye. This is sort of like a bloodline in my family. Our left eyes allow us to concentrate so much focused killing intent onto a person, that it can make one feel as if they are in a genjutsu. But the amazing thing is, it is pure killing intent. When the illusion starts, it will not stop until the person's mind shuts down from fear, they die, or somehow escape. Even after they escape, it will take several minutes for the effects to wear off. Mitsuki wrapped her free hand around Ito's neck. This technique is why our family was called the glaring snakes. Now die. Mitsuki tightened the grip on Ito's throat, snap, until the demonic spirit vanished. Mitsuki sighed, damn, that was a close call. That's it you little bitch. Mitsuki's eyes widened as she heard a foul demonic voice surrounding her. I was going to let you live after I had made Naruto mine, and had taken the power of the Kyuubi to burn Konaha the ground, but I am going to make you suffer. The ground began to shake in terror as hundreds of black spikes began to shoot out of the ground. Back with Naruto and Yakumo. Yakumo had switched positions and was now riding him backwards. OHYES, oh god, that feels so good. Oh yes, oh just a bit further, and you are mine. Naruto groaned as he felt a bit of the cum he had been holding in slip out. No way, no fucking way am I going to cum from being raped. Yakumo began to fondle her. Yes, cum inside me, give it to me, give me your seed, give me your cum. Yakumo sped up her efforts as she tried to get Naruto's ejaculation. No, no, no. Naruto was about ready to lose his mind from holding in his release for so long. Outside, Hattori kicked down the doors to the room where Naruto had the massive painting. Hattori looked around until the puppet's eyes landed on three people on the ground, their eyes glazed over as if they were in a genjutsu. Hattori looked at the deteriorating seal on the back of its neck. Shit, only 2 minutes left. The puppet pulled out its katana, and brought it down on the three of them. Mitsuki. Mitsuki waited for the spikes to impale her, but yelped in pain as she felt a stabbing pain in her leg. She then disappeared in a black wisp. Naruto. Naruto could not hold it anymore. He was about to release, when he screamed in pain as he too disappeared in a black wisp. Yakumo looked confused, until she yelped in pain as she also disappeared, in a black wisp, again. Outside, Naruto shot up with a start along with Mitsuki and Yakumo. Naruto looked at Hattori, who was now standing at a salute. Boss, I have completed the task you have set before me, I request that, bam. Naruto kicked Hattori so hard in the face that the puppet was sent to the other side of the room. Idiot. I said break us out of the genjutsu, not try to cut off our legs. Hattori stood up. Sorry boss, anyways, my seal is almost completely deteriorated, so I need to shut down and recharge, could you possibly do that? Naruto sighed as he walked over to Hattori with a limp in his steps. He touched the seal on the back of his head and let the puppet fall into his arms. I really have to increase this seal's efficiency, I can't keep recharging these guys every 10 minutes. Naruto pulled out a pen, and then stabbed his finger. Mitsuki cringed while Yakumo was blinking as she looked around. What happened? Mitsuki looked at Yakumo and snarled. You little bitch, you trapped Naruto in a genjutsu. What the hell was that Ito thing in your damn head? Yakumo quirked an eye and tilted her head. Ito, what is going on? Mitsuki's eyes widened. You mean, you don't know? Yakumo shook her head. You don't remember trying to. Hey, would the two of you keep it down for a bit? If I get distracted for even a minute I could screw up this seal, and believe me it is a pain in the to fix this thing. The two girls shut up as they allowed Naruto to fix the seal. Naruto used his blood and finished the final segment. Good, now for the final touch. Naruto began to charge a bit of chakra into the seal, making the seal glow red, and then back to blue. He sighed as he wiped his forehead. Alright then, I am beat, thump. Naruto fell over in an instant and began to sleep as Hattori also fell on top of him. Mitsuki and Yakumo looked at each other. Let's get him back to his room. They nodded to each other as they each grabbed either Naruto or the puppet, and began to drag him through the house towards his living quarters. Time skip. The next day Naruto had woken up, and had asked Yakumo what had happened. Apparently, she had a demonic spirit living inside of her. Naruto had managed to get some details on the spirit and had managed to seal it up. Since then he had been working on his puppets, bow staff techniques, and his sealing skills. It was now the day that they would officially meet their teams and senseis. Naruto kneeled in front of the altar he had in his room and lit some scented oils for each picture. I will see you later, my senseis. Naruto got up and grabbed his scroll case and placed it inside his cloak. He grabbed his favorite bow staff, and checked over the seals on his wrists. Okay, time to get ready. Naruto vanished via Shunshin, and headed towards the academy. Academy. Hinata and Funu were glaring at each other while Kiba was trying to ask Hinata for a date. Sasuke was brooding while trying to ignore Sakura's incredulous yapping. Ino, Amy, Choji, Shikamaru, Shino, and the rest of the class backed away from the considered, danger zone. Suddenly a large burst of wind sent everyone dodging flying papers as Naruto appeared in the room. Hinata and Funu were ogling his new look. Naruto was wearing a tattered black cloak with red clouds on it. On the inside of the cloak were 13 scrolls with various symbols on each one. On Naruto's back was an ornate golden bow staff with dragon-like designs flowing up the sides. Naruto also wore a ring on his left thumb with the kanji for jewel in it. Naruto looked at everyone and snorted, "What? Nobody ever seen Shunshin before." Everyone face-faulted as they watched Naruto sit in between Hinata and Funu. Kiba, Sasuke, and Sakura were having their own thoughts on the blonde. How dare that Dobi have power that I deserve? I am an Uchiha, an elite, his power should be mine. That baka is trying to upstage Sasuke-kun to gain my attention, how dare that Bakemono? That bastard orphan stole Hinata-chan from me, I will make him pay, and claim Hinata for my own. Boom, the doors slammed open, revealing Kyuubi standing there in a very interesting set of clothes. Oh Naruto-sama, you forgot your bento again. Kyuubi was wearing a tattered pair of black woman's hakama with red clouds on it. Her upper shirt consisted of a woman's skin-tight woman's jacket that cut off just below her, providing a shred of decency. On her left pinky finger she wore a ring with the kanji for void. Sasuke looked at Kyuubi. She is perfect, with her I can restore my clan. Sakura glared at Kyuubi. That hussy better stay away from my Sasuke-kun. Kiba drooled as he looked over her figure. Okay, scratch plan A, humiliate Naruto, and get Hinata and the babe. Naruto looked at Kyuubi and sighed. Q-chan, what have I told you about wearing such a provocative outfit in public? Kyuubi touched her fingers together much like a certain heiress would and looked thoughtful. Only do it while you are around. Naruto slapped his forehead. I give up, just try to avoid bringing too much attention to yourself. Kyuubi did a mock salute. Yes sir. Naruto sat down as Kyuubi chose to sit next to Hinata. Time skip. 3 hours later. All the other groups had already been picked up by their senseis, and the only ones left were Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Kiba, and Kyuubi, who said that she is not leaving her Naruto-sama. Sasuke walked over to Kyuubi. Why would you want to be with a Dobi, who has no clan name, when you can be with an elite Uchiha like me? Kyuubi got into a thoughtful pose as she began to name off reasons. He is kind, sweet, I think he is cute, I question your, shall I continue? Sasuke got pissed off and swung his fist at her. How dare you deny me, you bitch? Sasuke was about to strike Kyuubi, when the vixen raised a single finger and stopped his punch. I suggest you understand your opponent before you fight them. Her eyes glowed crimson as a demonic aura surrounded her. It could get you killed. Sasuke jumped back and trembled. She is strong, I must have her, and the council will give her to me. Kiba sauntered over to her. Hey baby, sorry you have to be with that dead last loser right there. Hey, he reached towards her. How about you come home with me so we can have some fun? Kyuubi turned at Kiba and smirked, before she delivered a punch to his chest that sent him to the other side of the room. Try to touch me again, and I will rip your arms off, and then shove them up your. She said it in such a sweetly sick voice it scared everyone there. Naruto shook his head as he looked at her. Q-chan, must you cause conflict? Kyuubi grinned as she latched onto Naruto. Yep, it's what I do. The doors to the room opened as two men walked in. One had gravity-defying silver hair, had his headband covering one of his eyes, and had a face mask on. He had standard Jonin attire, and was carrying around an orange book with the words, Ika Ika Paradise, on it. The other one had spiky brown hair, a metal face plate that outlined his face and a pale complexion. He also had standard Jonin attire. The white-haired man put his book away. By my first impression of you, you're all a, thwack, crunch, crck. The man stopped dead in his tracks as 3 tree roots shot out of the ground and impaled the wall next to his head, between his legs, and right next to his side, while 3 more tree roots impaled similar areas with the other Jonin. Naruto had his hand raised and snarled, "Your first impression? How about I tell you my first impression? You two are pathetic excuses of Jonin, who have no perception of the word time and are likely to get us killed on the first mission. I will meet the rest of you on the roof." The roots receded as Naruto and Kyuubi shunshin to the roof. The 2 Jonin swallowed as they looked at the others. "Let's do what he said." The 3 genin nodded, knowing that currently, disobeying Naruto was a hazard to their health. Naruto whistled a tune as he waited for his new team to get to the roof. He decided to pass the time by reviewing his seals. Opening his scroll, he read through one of the several seals he had created. Shoji Fuin, combination of storage seal, chakra seal, and cage bunshin. The seal allows one to seal a cage bunshin inside of an object, and allow them to take full control of said object. Works best in conjunction with battle puppets. Naruto had developed the seal because his puppet skills were limited in their usage due to his lack of proper chakra control, and the seal allow his cage bunshin could use a full range of motion inside the puppets, making them extremely dangerous. Naruto continued reading, but began to twitch as he felt something soft and squishy press against the back of his head. "Kyuubi, what are you doing?" Kyuubi grinned and jumped. "Yay, Naruto-sama knew it was me." Naruto sighed as he looked at Kyuubi. "You are the only person I know who will do something like that." Kyuubi pouted as she sat next to Naruto. "You are no fun, Naruto-sama." Naruto sighed at Kyuubi's attitude. "Oh, there you two are." Naruto looked up to see the white-haired Jonin, the black-haired Jonin, and his 3 teammates walk out of the building. "You really shouldn't go ahead of your senseis." Naruto looked at the white-haired man. "You shouldn't be 3 hours late to a meeting, it could get both you and your teammates killed." The Cyclops Jonin nodded his head. "Touché. Anyways," he sat down on a ledge, "how about we introduce ourselves?" Sakura looked at the white-haired Jonin. Sensei, what do you mean?" Naruto groaned as he looked at the pink-haired Banshee. "Honestly, if you are so stupid you need to ask, then why did you join the shinobi program?" Sakura looked at Naruto. "Shut up, you baka." She swung her fist and was about to punch Naruto, when he grabbed her by the wrist. "Last I checked, assault of a fellow shinobi is treason." Sakura glared at Naruto and pulled back her fist, sitting down with a noticeable HMPH. Kakashi gave them an eye smile. "Okay, I guess I will go first. I'm Kakashi Hatake. Things I like and things I hate. I don't feel like telling you that. My dreams for the future, never really thought about it. As for my hobbies, I have lots of hobbies." The group sweat dropped as they looked at him. All we learned was his name. The other Jonin sighed and looked at the 4 genin. "Okay, I will go next. My name is Yamato. I like walnuts and a bit of botany. I dislike oily foods, Orochimaru, and traitors. My dreams for the future are to lead my team to great heights. My hobbies are reading books and architecture." Kakashi I smiled. "Alright then, dog boy, you go next." Kiba glared at Kakashi, then sat back. "My name is Kiba Inuzuka. I like Akamaru," said Puppy barked happily. "Steak, and Hinata-chan," he said whilst glaring at Naruto. "I dislike anything chewy, and Naruto." Naruto shrugged his shoulders at this. "My hobbies are taking Akamaru for walks, and my dream is to get Hinata-chan to fall for me." Naruto rolled his eyes. "Yeah, like that is going to happen." Kakashi nodded his head. "Very good, Kiba. Now, you next, Pinky." Sakura glared at Kakashi. "My name is Sakura Haruno. I like blushes while looking at Sasuke. My hobbies, blush looking at Sasuke. Dreams for the future," giggles as she stares at Sasuke. "Dislikes, Naruto baka." Naruto looked at Sakura. "As me if I care." Kakashi stopped the two before they could get into an all-out argument. "Alright already, okay doom and gloom, your turn." Sasuke snorted. "My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things, and like very little, and I have no hobbies. My ambition is to revive the Uchiha clan," he said while looking at Kyuubi, "and to kill a certain man." Naruto noticed Sasuke look at Kyuubi when he mentioned reviving his clan. Not on my watch, asshole. Kakashi's eyes smiled. Very good, Sasuke, your last blondie. Naruto looked at Kakashi and sat up. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen, Mitsuki-chan, Hinata-chan, Funu-chan, Oji-san, and gardening. I dislike arrogant pricks, stupid fangirls, and moronic perverts. My hobbies include training, studying new types of plant life, and painting. My dreams for the future: restore my clan, and become Hokage. Kakashi smiled. Alright then, I want the four of you to meet at Training Ground 7 tomorrow, and don't eat breakfast, or you'll throw up. The two Jonin disappeared via Shunshin. Naruto got up and was about to leave. Hey Naruto, said Blonde, turned to see Sasuke glaring at him. What do you want, Uchiha? Sasuke looked at Naruto, and glanced at Kyuubi, before he turned to look at Naruto again. That woman, give her to me. Naruto snarled as he reached for his bow staff. And just why the hell should I? Sasuke snorted as he pointed to himself. Because I am an Uchiha, an elite, she would be perfect for repopulating my clan Dobi. Naruto released a light bit of killing intent as he placed himself in front of Kyuubi. It will be a cold day in hell before I let you get your hands on her, you spoiled little shit stain. Sasuke began to perform hand seals. Then I will just have to make you give her to me. Sasuke was halfway through the hand seals when his hands were wrapped up with tree roots. Naruto held up his arm and transformed it into a sharp blade made of paper. Really? I wonder how you will accomplish that with no jutsu. Naruto walked forward, intent on cutting off Sasuke's hands. Naruto-sama. But he stopped and turned towards Kyuubi. We don't have time for this. Because of that idiotic sensei of ours showing up 3 hours late, we are already running late for our appointment with Tsunade. Naruto sighed as he allowed his arm to return to normal. Alright, damn. The two began to walk away. Hey, but turned as they heard the banshee scream, let Sasuke-kun out of these tree roots. Naruto looked at Kyuubi, then grinned as he turned towards Sakura. I am sure the almighty Uchiha elite can get out of that by himself. Later, the two vanished in a Shunshin, while Sakura began to desperately try and free her beloved Sasuke-kun. Hospital. Naruto and Kyuubi appeared in front of the hospital, wondering if the results were in. Tsunade had gone through extensive amounts of studying to see how Naruto was related to her. For all she knew, he could have been distant relative of one of the other Senju branches. The DNA she had used in the original test showed he was pretty close in relation, but the DNA had deteriorated, so the results were partially corrupt. A fresh DNA sample would serve to provide much better results. The two walked inside and headed to the front desk. Hello, the receptionist looked and saw Naruto and Kyuubi looking at her. We are here for an appointment with Tsunade-sama. The woman looked at the clipboard and scanned its contents. She is in room 231. Go down the hall, up the stairs, and take a right. It should be on the left-hand side. Naruto and Kyuubi bowed. Thank you, miss, come on. Naruto and Kyuubi walked towards the place she had indicated, while a certain Sanin was going nuts. With Tsunade. Tsunade kept staring at the documents before her. She just could not believe it. She just couldn't fucking believe it. How could she have blind to something like this for so long? Laying before her was hers, Naoki's, and several other birth certificates, including Naruto and Minato. Along with that were the DNA samples and coding that had managed to be preserved. Once she had tested them, she was absolutely shocked with the results. The door opened as Naruto and Kyuubi walked through. Hello Tsunade-sama, you called for us. Tsunade turned to look at the two. Ah, Naruto, so glad you could come. Could the two of you please take a seat? The two nodded their heads and sat down on a nearby stool. Tsunade passed each of them a bottle of sake as she sat on the table. Trust me, you are going to need those. Naruto and Kyuubi nodded their heads as he got ready to uncork the tops. Okay, where to begin? Well, I was curious as to how close of a relation you were to me, Naruto. so I took the liberty of doing some DNA tests, but what I found weird was that your Y chromosome perfectly matched the DNA of my brother Nawaki. Now, I found this to be incredibly weird, since you got your Y chromosome from Minato. So I did a bit more digging, and I found these. She passed over a few documents. Those are forms stating that the two twin sons of my parents were to be separated upon their divorce. I grew up with Nawaki and my father, but I never even knew the other twin existed, so I look into the background of my mother and found her maiden name. Naruto and Kyuubi leaned in closer as Tsunade took in a deep breath. Her maiden name was Namikaze. Naruto and Kyuubi were about to uncork the tops of the sake bottles, but Tsunade stopped them. Hold on, there is more. The two reluctantly removed their hands away from the corks as Tsunade continued. Anyways, I dug further and found that my mother had dropped off a baby at the local orphanage. I found that the child had kept my mother's maiden name. The baby was Minato Namikaze. Your father was my baby brother. Naruto uncorked the top of the sake bottle and guzzled it down as quickly as he could. He then placed the cork back on the top and looked at Tsunade. So you are my aunt. Tsunade grinned. Pretty much. Tsunade did a classic Naruto grin as she scratched the back of her head, thump, but opened them when she heard the telltale sound of a body hitting the floor. She looked down to see Naruto on the floor, having fainted from shock. Well, that was expected. Next day, Naruto walked up to the training ground, wearing the same outfit he had worn the day before. Once he entered the clearing, he saw Sasuke, Sakura, and Kiba sleeping at the foot of one of the nearby trees. He sighed as he looked at them. Obviously they were too stupid to eat breakfast before they came here. Naruto walked over to a tree and sat on the branch as he waited for their sensei. 20 minutes later, Naruto was beginning to lose his patience. Neither one of their senseis had even shown up. He was about to jump off the tree and destroy the field when they finally showed up. Where the fuck are you two? Naruto's shouted question ended up waking up the three other genin. Kakashi smirked. Well, we got lost on the road of life. Naruto jumped off the tree and leaned against the trunk. You can't get lost on a road that only goes one way, you damned moron. Kakashi sighed. Alright then, now, on to the real genin test. The explanation is the same as in canon, but with 3 bells instead of 2. Alright, go. Immediately, Kiba, Sasuke, and Sakura scattered, leaving Yamato and Kakashi, and Naruto. Naruto had indeed stayed behind, and was staring down the two Jonin. Kakashi I smiled. You know, you are a bit odd. Naruto snorted as he reached towards his pouch, this coming from a Jonin with no perception of time. Kakashi turned towards Yamato. Yamato, I will take care of this, hold on to the bells please. Kakashi handed Yamato the bells, who then quickly jumped away. Naruto looked at Kakashi. What, afraid I might actually get the bells? Kakashi shrugged his shoulders. No, I am more worried about the Uchiha getting them. He is the only one who shows enough talent to do so anyways. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Typical Uchiha worshipper. Naruto snapped out 2 scrolls, one with a cracked Uchiha clan crest, and another with an Oni mask with a katana impaled through the forehead, always the arrogant ones. Naruto threw the scrolls in the air and performed a single hand sign, Kai. The 2 scrolls were covered in smoke clouds as Naruto suddenly adjusted his fingers into odd shapes. 2 figures finally revealed themselves. One was the samurai Naruto used to free himself, Mitsuki, and Yakumo from Du's Genjutsu. The other one was a new one. He had black hair that was partially spiky, as well as lightly curled. He had a single Sharingan eye on his left side, while the other side had bandages covering in. His entire right side was covered in a tattered black cloak. He was wearing Konaha Anbu garb. On his forehead was a headband, but instead of a village symbol, it had a white flower with a red demon eye in the center. Kakashi's own eye widened when he saw the figure. He had worked with that very same person when he was in Anbu Black Ops, Shisui, Uchiha. Naruto nodded his head. Yep, the one and only Shunshin no Shisui, my very first Hitokugutsu. Kakashi's eye widened. Human, puppet. Naruto nodded again. That's right, although, he looked at Shisui, I had to do quite a few modifications to him. Kakashi narrowed his eye. What do you mean modifications? Naruto grinned as he adjusted his fingers. You will find out, if you can provide a challenge. Kakashi reached towards his pouch and clicked it open. Perhaps, he pulled out the same orange book from the day before, but, how about I let you make the first move? The blonde shrugged his shoulders. Okay, he suddenly vanished into thin air as if he was never there to begin with. What? Kakashi shouted as he looked around. Naruto had been here a minute ago, so where, the bells? How could he be so stupid? Naruto was heading after Yamato. Kakashi quickly turned towards the direction he felt Yamato's chakra and quickly ran into the forest. Yamato. Yamato suddenly felt Naruto's chakra signature disappear. What? Where did he go? He then felt Kakashi's chakra begin to come closer. What is going on? Mokuden. Jubaku Satsu. Yamato looked down to see several tree roots shooting up towards him, and all of them were covered in sharp spikes. Shit. He performed a series of hand seals, Mizu Shunshin. As the roots began to wrap around him, he vanished in a swirl of water. He appeared on the other side of a clearing, panting from the sudden chakra influx. Where the hell did that come from? Yamato began to look around, trying to sense a chakra signature, when he suddenly heard clapping coming from behind. He turned around to see Naruto standing there with his two human puppets. Wow, and here I thought I was the only Mokuden user in Konaha, yet here we have another Mokuden user. I got the luck of the draw having someone like you as my sensei. Yamato stepped back. When I was told I would be given a surprise for this position, I did not expect something like this. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Expect the unexpected, my dear friend. Now, Naruto leaned back as he placed his fingers in a ram sign. Shall we begin? The two puppets stood up straight as a seal on the back of each of their necks glowed. The same glow went down the entire lengths of each of the puppets' bodies. They looked around, then at each other. Shisui spoke up. Wow, this feels much better than the old seals. Hattori agreed. Yep, man, applying those preservation and replenishing seals was nothing short of genius. Yamato stared at the two puppets. How the hell did you get those two to come to life? Naruto smirked. The wonders of Fuinjutsu. Let's leave it at that, Shisui, Hattori. The two puppets looked at Naruto. Yes, boss. Naruto grinned as he raised a finger, then pointed at the trees behind him. You two get the Cyclops, I will deal with Yamato. The two nodded and jumped into the trees, while Naruto turned towards Yamato. So, you ready? The former Anbu operative lowered himself into a fighting stance. Of course I am ready. With Kakashi, the cycloptic ninja jumped through the trees, following Yamato's chakra signature. He could not believe he got by a genin. He suddenly felt an influx of chakra, and had to jump out of the way as a series of diagonal slashes cut through the trees. He kept jumping from tree to tree as they were constantly cut down by the slashes. Finally he landed in a clear zone, and turned towards the direction the chakra slices were coming from. Two figures jumped out of the cloud caused by the falling debris and landed in a kneeling position. As they stood up, the cloud began to dissipate, revealing them to be Hattori and Shisui. Kakashi's eyes widened. How, you two are just PP puppets. Hattori snorted. Just puppets, I resent that remark, we are Hitokugutsu. As for your question, Fuinjutsu. Hattori grabbed two of his katanas and threw them in the air, then quickly grabbed his other two blades, and chucked them into the air right into the other two katanas. Kakashi watched as the katanas started spinning downwards, but his eyes narrowed as he saw a light travel down the edge of the blade. Hattori performed a single hand sign, Wangetsu Kair. As if by command, a crescent-shaped blade of energy came flying out of the katanas and towards Kakashi. The Cyclops had a single thought on his mind, oh shit. Boom. The ground was torn apart as the four chakra constructs tore away the landscape, sending piles of dust and debris everywhere. Shisui sighed as he looked at Hattori. You do remember we have a limited chakra, right? Hattori looked at Shisui. Yes, but now when we run out of chakra we go into stasis instead of completely being obliterated. Wow! The two Hitokugutsu snapped around to see Kakashi standing on a pile of rubble. I have to say I am impressed. Very good for a senju, but I bet Sasuke could do better. Shisui looked at Kakashi, and snorted. Alright then. He grabbed his cloak and mask. Time to take this up a notch. He tore off his cloak, revealing his right side. Kakashi's eyebrow rose as he looked at what had become of the former Anbu. His left arm had been replaced with a giant black crab-like claw, with the inside covered in numerous seals. His right eye had a scope in place of a normal eye, and the Sharingan in his left eye was spinning at a constant rate. Shisui looked at Kakashi and raised his pincer. He snapped it open and said, Sweden, Oshi Taiho. A blast came right out of the pincer and headed towards Kakashi. The said Jonin jumped out of the way and watched as the blast tore through the trees, and noticed a light mist, highly pressurized water. He turned towards the two human puppets. Looks like they have some specialties. Hattori grabbed his katanas and looked at Kakashi. You ready, Hataki? Kakashi lowered himself into a taijutsu stance. I am not a Jonin for nothing, you know. Hattori tightened his stance. Alright then. Hattori charged at Kakashi as Shisui fired off more pressure blasts. Jutsus and techniques. Mokuden. Jubaku Satsu, wood release. Tree binding death. Tree roots travel towards an opponent and wrap them up. When bound, it is impossible to use hand signs. Wangetsu Kaier, crescent slice. A specially made katana sends out a crescent of chakra towards an opponent. When used in conjunction with another attack of the same kind, it will produce a massive implosion. Sweden. Oshi Taiho, water release. Pressure cannon. A controlled ball of water is wrapped in chakra, and sent directly towards an opponent. The attack is strong enough to tear through an opponent. Puppet specs. Shisui. Human puppet made from the body of Shisui Uchiha. Possess. Extreme ability to use Shunshin no matter the circumstances. Also has high affinity for water. Right arm was replaced by a large crab-like claw. Findor Korea's release form from bleach, lined with seals filled with water and chakra, and right eye was replaced with a scope that locks on a target. Hattori. Human puppet made from the body of an unnamed samurai captain of Tetsu no Kuni. Has ability to use 4 katanas and has larger reserves than most of the other puppets. Seals. Soji Fuin. Specialized seal created by Naruto, allows him to seal cage bunshin inside of a puppet, allowing them to use a puppet's full capabilities, as Naruto's lack of chakra control makes it difficult for him to control them to their full potential. Kakashi dodged out of the way of Shisui's pressure blasts, and jumped out of the way of Hattori's slashes. The samurai spun on his heel and sent a horizontal slash at Kakashi. The Cyclops Jonin flipped backwards in time to avoid the slash and spun on his palm, sending a heel kick at the human puppet. Hattori raised his swords across him and blocked the incoming strikes, then slashed at Kakashi again, this time with a chakra-infused slash. The Jonin jumped out of the way in time to avoid being cut to ribbons and attempted a counterattack. Sweden. Rensei Kato. Kakashi snapped his head around and saw a spiral drill of water shoot out of Shisui's claw. The drill spun faster and faster, sending wisps of water out as it tore through the air. Kakashi quickly ran through hand seals and shouted, Sweden. Suiryuden no Jutsu. The nearby pond exploded as a dragon made of water shot out towards the incoming drill. The two attacks clashed with a splash, twisting and crashing into each other, sending particles upon particles of water everywhere as they tried to gain the upper hand. Kakashi was so focused on his technique, that he did not notice Hattori jump behind him until the last second. He dove out of the way and released his jutsu, allowing the drill to gain the upper hand and crash into Kakashi's path. He crossed his arms across his chest and managed to avoid the flying rocks and stone. Hattori landed next to Shisui and sheathed his blades. Ready, Shisui? Shisui turned towards Hattori and nodded. Ready, Hattori. Hattori grinned as he reached into a pouch on his side and took out an odd-looking object. It had two hollow parts that were in the shape of the hilt of each of his blades, and it had a chain attached at the bottom. There were also what appeared to be polarized attraction seals placed on its sides. Hattori slipped them onto the two katanas on his right side. There was a clicking sound just before Hattori pulled out his two katanas. The object that he had placed on their hilts connected the two at the hilt, and then forced the bottoms of their hilts to connect with each other, creating a double-bladed sword. Hattori spun the blade in one hand, then gripped the combined hilt as he charged chakra through it, Jugen Kair. The chakra shaped around the sword as he swung it, sending a barrage of crescent-shaped chakra slashes at Kakashi. Shisui held up his claw, and forced it to widen at 180. A seal in the joint of the claw glowed brightly as the Uchiha human puppet spoke, Bakuretsu Gogyu Sum. An explosion of water erupted from the claw and formed into a larger version of said claw. Shisui jumped at Kakashi and reared the claw back before he shot it towards the Jonin. Kakashi reacted quickly and performed hand signs. Doden, Iwa Kabe, a wall of stone erected itself and stopped the incoming strikes. The resulting explosion caused by the blocked attacks created a cloud cover that blocked out all vision in the area. Hattori and Shisui got ready for a counterattack, unaware of the shadowed figure behind them. Naruto vs. Yamato. Naruto and Yamato charged at each other as wood shot from the ground around them. Yamato created a spear out of wood, while Naruto pulled out his own bow staff and rode on one of the roots that were heading towards Yamato. The two clashed weapons, making Yamato's staff split from the sheer force behind Naruto's staff. Yamato looked at the staff and turned towards Naruto. Nice staff, where did you get it? Naruto smirked as he applied more pressure, making Yamato's staff snap in two. He swung the ornate staff at his fellow Mokuden user, making him jump back. Yamato landed on the ground and forced another wooden staff to grow. Naruto spun his staff around. I got this staff from my sensei. Yamato raised an eyebrow as he scratched his head. I was unaware that Akasuna no Sasori knew how to perform bojutsu. Naruto grinned, before he suddenly vanished. Yamato spun around and blocked a strike from Naruto, who was chuckling lightly. Whoever said I got it from Sasori-sensei? He kicked Yamato in the chest, making the wood-using Anbu operative cringe as he blocked another strike from Naruto. Naruto suddenly jumped into the air and threw 3 kunai at Yamato, who ducked out of the way, making them fly into the trees. Naruto grinned as he sealed up his staff. Perfect. He ran through hand seals and shouted, Mokuden, Daijin no Jutsu. Naruto punched his arm forward, sending thick spiked roots at Yamato from his arm. Yamato leapt out of the way and ran through hand seals. Mokuden, Mokujoheki. Pillars of wood shot out of the ground and formed a dome around Yamato, blocking the incoming wood spikes. Naruto frowned, and then grinned as he performed a hand sign with his free hand, Origami no Jutsu. Nokogiri. The spiked roots quickly split apart into paper and formed into several whirring buzz saws and then sliced into the wooden wall created by the former Anbu member. Yamato saw the wooden begin to split and opened up a port behind him in his wooden wall and got out just as the saw blades completely cut through. Naruto saw Yamato get out of the dome and was about to attack him, when he suddenly froze and his eyes widened. He then sighed in annoyance and sat with his legs crossed, grumbling about idiotic teammates and their stupid egos. Yamato saw Naruto's condition. Aren't you going to attack me? Naruto sighed and scratched the back of his head. Why bother? Even if I do, I would have failed this test because my damn teammates aren't willing to work together. Yamato raised an eyebrow. How do you know that? Naruto stood up. You know those 3 kunai I threw at you. Yamato nodded his head. Those were actually transformed clones that I sent to get the 3 stooges to work with me. But apparently those 3 don't want to work together. Yamato raised an eyebrow. How do you know that? Naruto chuckled. Kage Bunshin was originally created to be a reconnaissance ninjutsu. If one dispels, then I get all the information that the clone originally had. I sent 3 clones to try and get the 3 of them. I can tell you exactly what they said. Naruto coughed and spoke in a voice sounding much like Kiba. No way, you dead last orphan bastard. I will not work with my competition to Hinata's heart. He then coughed again and spoke in a voice very reminiscent of Sakura. No way, you dead last dobi. Neither I, nor Sasuke-kun needs the help of a worthless loser like you. He coughed again and spoke much like Sasuke. I am an Uchiha, an elite. I don't need the help of a clanless bastard. Yamato sighed as he massaged his temples. Naruto continued to speak, and to add to that, they all ran a kunai into my Kage Bunshin's chest, wholeheartedly thinking that they were the real me. Yamato gasped in shock. His own teammates attacked his Kage Bunshin with intent to kill, thinking it was the real Naruto. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Well, since the test is now over and useless, I am going to go sit down. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an apple and bit into it. Juicy. He walked over to a nearby tree and continued to eat his apple. Yamato meanwhile was rubbing his temples. Oh boy. 20 minutes later, Kakashi walked through the trees, confused as hell. He had snuck up on the 2 puppets and was about to take them down when they fell over, utterly useless. He had sealed them into a scroll and headed off to find his opponents, only to find him and Yamato conversing over things such as architecture and botany. He walked up to them and asked, why aren't the 2 of you fighting? The test is still, Yamato interrupted Kakashi. The test is over. Naruto is the only one who gets the true meaning behind the test. The others would sooner stab their teammate in the back than work with him. Kakashi sighed. He hoped the last Uchiha would be smarter than this. He knew Kiba and Sakura were not smart enough to get it, but he expected the last Uchiha of all people to get it. He shrugged his shoulders and thought to himself, well, I am sure once we begin training him he will understand. 5 minutes later, Kiba, Sasuke, and Sakura were tied to the logs while Naruto was arguing with Kakashi about his human puppets. Kakashi wanted to hand them over to Sasuke, thinking he will have more use for them, but Naruto told him that the 2 puppets were created by him, and that he made certain that nobody else could use them except for him. Kakashi eventually relented and gave Naruto the scrolls, saying that if the Uchiha could not use them then they were useless. Naruto tucked them away, but made certain to keep a close eye on Kakashi. Kakashi turned towards the group. Alright, I have good news, and bad news. The good news is that none of you will be sent back to the academy. The 3 tied-up genin cheered, but Naruto narrowed his eyes. The bad news is that all of you will be dropped from the shinobi program. What? All 4 of the genin shouted, with Naruto leaking killing intent. The blonde genin stepped forward and snapped at Kakashi. What the hell point is there in dropping us from the shinobi program, you? Kakashi glared at Naruto. Because none of you deserve it, not one of you could get the true meaning behind the test. Naruto snarled at Kakashi and shouted. None, dumb, I figured it out in the first few seconds. We had to work together as a team. Why the hell do you think I sent those damn Kage Bunshin after those 3 to get them to help? Kakashi snorted. If the Uchiha could not figure it out, I doubt a dead last orphan could. Yamato stared at Kakashi in shock. This was not the man who he admired for so long. Naruto rolled his eyes and walked over to the genin and reached into their pouch and pulled out a single kunai each. He tossed them towards Yamato, who caught them. Check them for traces of my chakra. Yamato did as such, and found that all 3 kunai had Naruto's chakra covering the entire blade. He looked at the 3 genin, and gave them a haunting look, scaring them half to death. You 3 attacked Naruto without provocation with intent to kill. Sakura snapped. It was just a Kage Bunshin. Yamato glared at her and snapped. But you didn't know it was a Kage Bunshin until after you stabbed it, am I correct? Sakura opened her mouth to retort, only to look down. Kakashi sighed. Very well, I will give all of you a second chance. Naruto, you are allowed to eat, but do give them any of the bento. Kakashi and Yamato vanished, leaving Naruto with the 3 bentos. Naruto flicked his wrist, and 3 bushes appeared in front of them. A sharp branch cut the ropes and he spoke, "Eat, you 3 need to keep your strength up." Kiba looked at Naruto with confusion, but Sensei said, Naruto cut him off before he could finish. Kakashi said that I wasn't allowed to feed you anything from the bento. He said nothing about growing a bush with food on it. Now eat. Sakura hmphed and said with disdain dripping from her voice, I don't need a dead last to femioopumf. Naruto grabbed a pear that he had grown and shoved it, large end first, into her mouth. Naruto shook his head, man, do you always complain? Naruto sat down and opened the bento, and he quickly pushed it to the side and grabbed an apple off of the bush in front of Kiba. Kiba frowned and whined, hey, that's mine. Naruto finished the apple and threw the core at Kiba. I grew it, it's mine. He took a pear from Sakura's bush, deal with it. What did I just tell you for? Kakashi suddenly appeared in front of them and shouted. Naruto, unfazed by the killing intent, answered, feeding my teammates, you didn't say a damn thing about not feeding them, you only said don't give them anything from the bento. Kakashi looked at Naruto, is that your excuse? Naruto bit into a peach he had grown on Sasuke's bush. Pretty much, he tossed a pear at Kakashi, there you go. Kakashi caught the pear, and gave them an eye smile, then, you all pass. Same speech as in canon, minus Naruto shouting how he will be on the memorial stone. Naruto stood up and brushed himself off, well, if anybody needs me, I will be at my house. Ask Tsunade Oba-san for directions. Kakashi waved his hand, then noticed the uneaten bento. Hey Naruto, why didn't you eat the bento? I made it myself. Naruto sighed and walked over to the bento. He then walked over to Kakashi, because, your food. He opened it, to reveal what looked like pre-chewed dog food and raw fish eggs and, was that a tendril, a pile of junk that looks like it was pulled out of a toiletry system does not count as food, who taught you how to cook? Kakashi scratched the back of his head, I kind of don't know how to cook. Comma. Naruto slapped his face, if this is my sensei, we are doomed. 2 weeks later, Naruto was gritting his teeth as he walked into the mission hall with Tora, the demon cat in a cage he made from his Mokudan abilities, and inside the room was the daimyo's wife. As soon as she saw Tora, she shouted, oh, my little Tora-chan. She ran over and opened the cage before she scooped the cat in her arms. Oh, mommy missed you so much. She began to squeeze the cat extremely tightly before she paid for the mission and left. Tsunade sighed and looked at the mission scrolls. Okay, so for D-rank missions we have cleaning out the gutters, walking the Inuzuka dogs. Tora. Tsunade cringed as she heard the daimyo's wife scream. Or you could. Crash. She looked up to see a large hole in the wall surrounded by tree roots, and heard Naruto shouting out things that would make a sailor blush. 10 minutes later, Naruto came walking through the hole in the wall with Tora in one hand, and the daimyo's wife being led into the room by the other. He turned towards the daimyo's wife and pointed to the cat. This is how you pet a cat. He gently set the cat up in a position that allowed it to be comfortable, and began to gently stroke its fur. What you were doing, was pushing it closer to its last remaining life. He placed the cat in the woman's arms, you try. The daimyo's wife gently pet the cat, which purred as it nuzzled into her chest. The woman smiled and skipped out the room. Naruto turned towards the others in the room, who were staring at him in shock. What, if I had to catch that damn cat one more time I was going to feed it to a rhinoceros beetle. Tsunade lightly chuckled. Alright then, well for D ranks we have. Naruto cut her off. With all due respect Tsunade-sama, I think we have done enough D ranks to qualify for AC rank. Iruka stood up. Naruto, your team is not ready for AC rank yet, and you need to have. Naruto pulled out a shinobi handbook and looked inside. Konaha genin need to have a minimum of 36 completed D ranks to qualify for AC rank. Kiri requires 20, Iwa demands for 56, Suna needs at least 13, and Kumo requires a bare minimum of 27. He closed the book. Thanks to my Cage Bunshin we have managed to complete 42D ranks, and each of us have skills that are supplementary for at least AC rank. He snapped the book shut. I fail to see how we are not qualified for AC rank. Iruka wanted to retort, but could not find anything to disprove what Naruto said. Tsunade sighed. All right, we have one mission that you could go on. She pulled out a folder. 3 people from a foreign country came asking for bodyguards. They are willing to pay for AC rank mission. They have been waiting a week to get a team. She smiled. Are you all willing to accept this mission? Naruto smirked. Yes, we are, Tsunade-sama. Tsunade nodded and pressed a button on her PA. Send them in. The doors to the mission office opened and 3 people walked inside. Naruto turned around and looked at who had come, and his eyes widened. The 3 who walked in who saw Naruto also had their eyes widen. They all pointed at Naruto and shouted, Naruto. Naruto stared at the 3 people in front of him. It was Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari. Sweden. Rensei Kado, water style. Drilling vortex. Water is converted into a rapidly spinning drill that can tear through rock and stone. Naruto's eyes widened in shock as he saw Inari, Tsunami, and Tazuna for the first time in year. Oh my kami. Inari ran up to Naruto and hugged his leg. Naruto Nisan. The force of him charging into Naruto's legs sent him toppling over. Naruto smiled, and chuckled as he patted Inari's head. Inari, it's great to see you again. He grinned and stood up, Inari still clutching his leg. Man, you have gotten big, haven't you? Inari grinned a fox-like grin as he looked up at Naruto. Yep, and I am stronger too. He flexed his arm, trying to show off his muscles. Naruto chuckled. That you are Inari. He looked up at Tazuna and Tsunami and smiled. Hey Tazuna Gigi, Tsunami-chan. Tsunami smiled and walked over to Naruto, wrapping her arms around him in a warm hug. It's so good to see you again, Naruto. She smiled as she looked down at him. You have certainly grown the last time we saw you. She pinched his cheek playfully. Have you been eating your vitamins? Naruto chuckled and rubbed his cheek. Yes, Tsunami-chan, I have been eating my vitamins. Naruto then playfully poked her in the stomach. I really owe you for teaching me how to cook. I would have died of food poisoning from my own cooking years ago if it wasn't for you. Tsunami blushed at the praise as Tazuna walked up, and patted the top of Naruto's head. Ha, true, the first time you made us something to eat I almost chucked it up then and there. While the 4 were talking, everyone in the room was watching the events unfold before them, until Tsunade coughed, drawing the conversation to a close. Naruto, how is it that you know the clients? Naruto smiled. Well, when I originally left Konaha years ago to train, I ended up in Nami no Kuni. He smiled and looked at Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari. They helped me out back then. Tsunade raised an eyebrow, and sighed. Very well, now, all of you are to be ready to head to Nami no Kuni in. Hokage-sama, if I may interject. Everyone turned to Kakashi, who was for once in a serious stance. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. What is it, Kakashi? Kakashi cleared his throat and looked her directly in the eyes. I believe Naruto should be forbidden from taking part in this mission. Naruto snarled at Kakashi. What? Kakashi ignored Naruto. Due to Naruto's history with the client, it will prove as a conflict of interest, and will likely result in the failure of the mission. Thus I believe Naruto should not be allowed to accompany us on this mission. Yamato stared at Kakashi with a, what the, expression on his face, not knowing how Kakashi can say something like that. Tsunade frowned. Denied, Naruto shall accompany you on this mission. Kakashi tried to protest, but Hokage-sama. Tsunade smashed her fist into the desk, cracking it as she snarled, Naruto, shall accompany you, on this mission. Is there any part of that you wish to try and protest, or shall I have you charged with insubordination? Kakashi gulped and lowered his head. No Hokage-sama. Tsunade smirked. Good. Now I want everyone ready to leave in 57 minutes. And Kakashi, she cast a harsh glance at the Jonin, if you are so much as a second late, you will be demoted to academy student and have to retake the entire Shinobi Academy from scratch, am I clear? Kakashi's eye widened as he vanished in a shunshin to get ready for the mission. Tsunade chuckled to herself and looked at the remaining members of the team. Well, what are you waiting for? Go get ready. Sasuke, Kiba, and Sakura left, but not before casting harsh glares to Naruto. Yamato stayed behind as Naruto turned back to Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari. So, this question has been bugging me, but how is Kaiza doing? Tsunami, Tazuna, and Inari flinched, but surprisingly hid it well. However, Naruto and Yamato noticed the sudden flinch. Tsunami smiled sweetly. He is back home. Naruto nodded his head, but made certain to remember this incident. 1 hour later, the team had set off on the mission a few minutes earlier after each one had secured their materials. Naruto was wearing his usual outfit, but if one looked closely, they would notice that 3 of his scrolls were not in their usual place, and his stance allowed him to reach for his bow staff quickly. Yamato was also in a stance ready for attack. Every other shinobi in the group was lazily walking, as if this would be a walk in the park. Naruto sighed as he rubbed his forehead. Why oh why did I get stuck with these people? Naruto was about to continue looking forward, until he felt a pair of press into his back. Sighing, he turned his head. Q-chan, what are you doing? Kyuubi grinned. Hugging you. Naruto sighed once more. Kyuubi had insisted on coming with them, and since she was not a shinobi, there was nothing any of them could do to stop her from coming with them. Not that Kyuubi minded her company, he just wished that Kiba, Sasuke and Kakashi would stop sending lust-filled looks at her. Kyuubi smiled, then her ears twitched as she glanced at an incoming puddle. Naruto and Yamato also noticed the puddle, but made no move to show that they saw. Everyone else did not even notice it, and continued on with their business. They had not walked 10 feet past the puddle, before there was a surge of chakra, a cloud of smoke, and 2 shinobi with breathers and kiri headbands leapt out to attack the group. Kakashi's eye widened in shock, while the rest of the genin were frozen in fear. The 2 shinobi twisted their arms, which had massive gauntlets on them, connected by a chain, and wrapped it around Naruto and Kyuubi, slicing them to bits. Inari shouted, Naruto Nichin. The 2 shinobi hissed, 2 down, and charged at Tsunami, Tazuna, and Inari. Inari growled and reached into his back pocket, pulling out the same kunai Naruto had given him years before, and stood in front of Tsunami and Tazuna, holding the kunai out. The 2 shinobi swung the chain, intent on chopping the 3 of them to bits, only for them to trip as a sudden pressure wrapped around their ankles and yanked them so they fell on their face. Everyone stared in shock as the 2 shinobi were suddenly dragged into the forest by an invisible force. Several moments of silence passed, until there was a light clacking sound as the trees rustled, and a figure stepped out of the forest, causing all their eyes to widen. The 2 shinobi were tied up by a glowing rope-like extension and were held in the mouth of what appeared to be a massive spider. The spider itself looked to have been made out of wood and steel, and had been recolored to more so resemble an actual spider. The spider was easily as tall as a human being, and sported 8 legs, each one ending with a spiked leg with serrations, and it had a glowing abdomen filled with what appeared to be chakra, except it was a purplish color. It had 8 eyes, and on the back of its abdomen, a tenchiron flower with a single red slitted eye in the center, but the spider itself was not what caused everyone's eyes to widen, it was who was riding atop it. Naruto Uzumaki, and Kyuubi, who had just moments ago been sliced to bits. Naruto Nichin. Inari ran up towards Naruto as he got off of the giant spider. Inari sobbed into his leg, clutching him tightly. I thought you died. Naruto smiled and patted Inari's head. Hey, I ain't going to die that easily. Naruto smiled down at Inari. He then frowned, turning his gaze towards the 2 captured Kiri nin. Now, let's see what you 2 know. One of them scoffed, "We'll never talk, do your worst." Naruto grinned darkly, "Oh, I intend to." He raised his hand, which revealed 5 chakra strings connected between him and the spider, but first, introductions are in order, he flicked his wrist. A clacking sound was heard from the spider puppet, and 2 of the spider's mandibles extended out, and positioned themselves at the throats of the 2 Kiri-nin, and a long needle shot out from both mandibles, just barely stopping before they pierced their flesh. Naruto motioned his middle and index finger, causing a whirring sound to be made inside the spider. The 2 needles were then filled with a black fluid, which was clearly toxic, and for a seal to slide onto the edge of the spider puppet's mandible. Naruto grinned as the Kiri-nin started to sweat. Now, where was I? Oh yes, introductions. He smiled. Demon brothers, meet Onagumo. He indicated towards the giant spider puppet. Onagumo, meet dinner. One of the brothers was so scared he was actually shivering, while the other one scoffed a little. Oh please, it's just a puppet. Naruto frowned. Then smirked darkly. In a way, yes, but how about a little biology lesson? When you are nearing death, your body starts to leak chakra in the bucket loads. To accommodate this little fact, the body also produces chakra at the same, if not a faster rate that the body is losing it. He pointed towards the spider's glowing abdomen. You see all that chakra back there? The 2 brothers turned their heads and looked at the spider's glowing orb of an abdomen, which was obviously filled with chakra. Naruto grinned at their confused looks. Onagumo is a special puppet, the only one capable of creating its own chakra strings. But, for her to create the strings, she first needs a substantial amount of chakra in storage. Now admittedly, I contribute some of my chakra to the storage, as does Q-chan, but Onagumo's primary method of gaining chakra is through those 2 seals. He pointed to the seals on the mandibles. Those are chakra absorption seals, which are connected to chakra conducting pipes that bring the absorbed chakra through a series of purifying seals to make the chakra usable by her, and allow her to create chakra strings that she can use, much like how a spider can use silk. The 2 Kiri-nin stared at him blankly. And you are telling us this why? Naruto shrugged. I thought I should let you both know how you are going to die. He moved his thumb. The mandible on the left side stabbed into one of the brother's neck, and injected the poison. At first, the brother merely suffered a slight pinch of pain as the toxin was dripped into his system, and then a pull on his chakra, and then he was suddenly filled with agony as his chakra was yanked out of his body, and felt his very chakra network get torn from how rough the chakra was being pulled on. The other brother watched as his brother seethed in pain, twitching repetitively as his chakra was being ripped from his body by the now glowing seal on the mandible. Finally, the seal stopped glowing, and his brother panted as the needle was removed from his neck. Naruto smiled. Now, unless you want to suffer again, I suggest you start talking, now. The brother which had been put through the torment immediately cracked. I'll talk. I'll talk. We were hired to kill the bridge builder and his family by Gato of Gato Industries. Naruto's eyes widened in shock, not expecting that answer, and he turned his attention towards Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari, who were nervously looking away. Sighing, he flicked his wrist, revealing 2 puppet scrolls. One had the image of a spider on it, while the other had the kanji for Fuin. He flicked his wrist again, opening both scrolls. One of them was covered in a cloud of smoke. Once the smoke disappeared, it revealed what appeared to be a barrel, but was odd in its dimensions. It somewhat resembled a reverse hourglass with 6 limbs. It had 4 legs, each one only 90 degrees away from another limb, and it had 2 arms. It was covered in a vast menagerie of various seals. Naruto held out his other hand, allowing chakra strings to attach to the barrel-shaped puppet, causing it to split open on one side, and a rack filled with scrolls extended outward. The arms of the puppet grabbed 2 scrolls, each one with the kanji for human, and rolled them open, revealing an extremely complicated seal array. Onagumo threw the 2 Kiri-nin, and they vanished into a cloud of smoke. Once the cloud dissipated, it revealed the scrolls, which now had a few new kanji on them, signifying that they were currently in use. Onagumo reached out with one of her arms and touched the scroll that had a spider on it, and it too vanished in a cloud of smoke. Naruto tucked it away in one of the 3 empty scroll spaces, and then sealed Fuin away, before placing it in one of the other empty scroll spaces. Sighing, Naruto turned towards Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari. What's going on in Nami no Kuni, and I mean what's really going on? Tazuna sighed, and looked up. We're sorry for deceiving you, but we had no other alternative. Our country has been overtaken by a man known as Gato, of Gato Industries. On the surface, he sells goods via a shipping industry, but beneath the surface, he is a cruel tyrant at the heart of a series of illegal trades, drugs, human trafficking, weapons, the whole works. Tsunami continued, our country is so poor off that not even our daimyo has that much money anymore. We barely managed to scrounge enough money together from everyone in Nami no Kuni to afford a C-rank mission. Naruto frowned. Why hasn't anyone tried to fight? Surely Kaiza could rally the villagers together to stop this man. All 3 of their heads fell, and Inari whimpered out, T2-san, a few tears flowed down his cheeks. Tazuna sighed. Gato knew that Kaiza would be able to rally the villagers together, so before he made it official that he had taken over, Tazuna could not hold in his tears and wiped his eyes. Tsunami choked out, they killed Kaiza-kun, in a public execution. Naruto's eyes widened as he processed this information. Kakashi spoke up, since you lied to us about the mission, we will not be completing it. Kakashi turned away and began to walk off. Your plight is no longer our concern. I'm not leaving them, Kakashi. Everyone looked towards Naruto, who was standing straight up, glaring intensely at Kakashi. Kakashi narrowed his eyes. Are you disobeying a direct order from your Jonin-sensei Genin? Naruto crossed his arms. That sure as hell is what it looks like. And personally I don't give a shit. If you want to report me to Hokage-sama, then by all means do it. She is more likely to demote you to Genin for leaving me to complete a mission clearly above my station in rank than she is to punish me, Hataki. He looked at his 3 old friends. I will not leave them to suffer and die while I can help them, even if I have to fight all of Gato's army by myself. Yamato smiled at Naruto's nobility. Truly, Naruto's heart was the greatest amongst the group. Kyuubi smiled and stood by Naruto, and since I am not an official shinobi, you can't tell me what to do anyways, so, she stuck her tongue out and dragged her finger under her eyelid childishly, making raspberry noises. Kakashi was about to try scolding Naruto again. If the Dobi is going, then I'm going. I will not be outdone by a clanless orphan. Everyone looked at Sasuke, who had been the one to speak up. Sakura grinned. Yeah, Sasuke-kun could take on Gato's army without breaking a sweat. Cha. Kiba grinned. Like I am going to lose to this bastard, I will win Hinata-chan's heart. Kakashi looked at them, and I smiled. Well, if Sasuke is willing to do, I see no real issues. Yamato sneered at Kakashi as the team shouted in approval. Naruto smiled and walked with Tazuna, Tsunami, and Inari. Sasuke and Sakura, along with Kiba, followed up. Kakashi was about to follow, when Yamato grabbed his shoulder. Kakashi-senpai, can I speak to you for a moment? Kakashi smiled. Sure, what is it, yo-oif? Kakashi doubled over as Yamato struck him full force in the stomach, and was yanked up by his hair by a pissed-off Yamato. Yamato sneered, you disgust me. First you pick favorites with your squad, even though you had made damn well sure that Naruto was on your team. You are clearly doing everything you can to stunt his growth. I know it has nothing to do with Kyuubi, as you are smart enough to know that Naruto could never be overtaken by the Kyuubi's influence. Now you are willing to send a family to their deaths, and allowing a country to fall to ruin to a corporate madman, all because you won't get your pay, and you only agree to help them when Sasuke, a spoiled brat, wants to continue the mission. He shoved Kakashi to the ground. Mark my words, Kakashi-senpai. Tsunade-sama will hear of this. He walked past Kakashi as he stumbled to get to his feet. Meanwhile, 3 individuals sat in a small room, all of whom were clearly dangerous. The first figure was a large man sitting on a couch, whose face was covered by some sort of cloth, and his slightly spiky hair fell over the rest of his face. He had 2 large sleeves on his arms, and had a pair of combat-ready pants. At his side, a large blade, easily the man's size, laid against his seat. The second figure was smaller, about the height of an average teenager. The figure was wearing some sort of battle dress garments, and their hair was in a feminine bow. The last figure stood in the shadows, and was rather tall. They had long hair that reached past their shoulders, and they wore what appeared to be a jonin vest, and he wore some sort of fur-based cloak over his shoulders. The rest of his attire was average, at first glance. The man in the corner snorted, "It's been 3 hours, your lackeys have failed you." The man sitting on the couch looked up and grabbed his blade, "So it would seem. I guess it's my turn then." He stood up and walked towards the door, followed closely by the figure wearing the battle dress. The man in the shadows spoke up, "Zabuza, don't go and get yourself killed," clearly sounding insincere about it. The man now known as Zabuza stopped, and looked back, "So says the one whose entire squad was killed, hunting for a kid." He walked out the door, closing it behind him. The man raised his head as the wind blew back the curtains, allowing the light to enter, revealing his features. The man's skin was pale as death, and his eyes golden and slitted like a snake's. The man grinned darkly, "That may be, but I am the one who survived." The light shimmered over his forehead, revealing his slashed Konaha forehead protector. 3 hours later, Naruto and his team walked through a thick mist in Nami no Kuni, all the while watching out for any possible attacks. Naruto suddenly stopped, and threw a kunai into the bushes. He walked over to the bush, revealing a snow-white rabbit. Kakashi smiled, "Congratulations Naruto, you managed to save us from a little white rabbit." Naruto frowned at Kakashi, "Did you ever take biology lessons, Kakashi, or do they not teach you that in School of the Dumbasses?" He held up the rabbit, which was still quivering. "This rabbit is pure white, a winter coat, and it is the middle of the summer. Now think about this for a second, why would a rabbit with a winter coat be here in the middle of the summer?" Kakashi stared at Naruto for a bit, then his eyes widened in realization, substitution. Naruto nodded his head, then his eyes widened, "Everyone down." He grabbed Tsunami, Tazuna, and Inari and brought them down as a gigantic sword flew over their heads and sliced into a tree. Naruto quickly got up and readied himself into a battle stance, and looked around. Well, looks like we got ourselves a fighter." Naruto turned in the direction of the voice, to see a man standing on the hilt of the gigantic sword, "But how about we do this the easy way? Just hand over the bridge builder and his family, and nobody gets hurt." Naruto flicked his wrist, another scroll flying out of it, this one having a shield-wielding suit of armor on it. "You are going to take them over my cold dead body." Zabuza Momochi. Zabuza sighed, "You know my name, yet you are still willing to fight." Naruto smirked, "If I can fight Kisame and go to a standstill, I'm pretty sure I can handle the weakest of the 7 swordsmen." He unrolled the scroll, and was covered in a cloud of smoke. Zabuza frowned, and waited to see what Naruto would pull, watching as the smoke disappeared. Once the smoke vanished, it revealed an interesting sight. A large puppet, at least 10 feet tall, with Naruto sitting where the chest would be, his arms inside the puppet's arms and his legs inside the puppet's legs. A single wooden armor piece fell over the chest area, which had a single crimson glass orb on it. The arms each sported 3-fingered hands, including the thumb, and both legs were sporting 2 large toes on them. One of the arms reached out, and a large pole made completely out wood shot out of the ground, into its hands. The puppet, with the dexterity of a regular human, spun the pole, and stood in a battle stance. Zabuza grinned, "Ah, it's been a while since I fought a puppet user, This ought to be fun. He ripped his blade out of the tree, and flew at the giant puppet, swinging his sword down, which was blocked by the puppet's staff. The battle has begun.